Hello. Thank you for tuning in. Because community education occupies half of the official title of this course, I thought it was worthwhile to just take a little bit of time to get on the same page and get thinking. Hopefully it'll be generative for the community workshop project. But I wanted to offer just some examples of community education, think about different types of community education, and then just review the steps for how to get started in the conversation of how to plug in, where to go from here, how to get your foot in the door doing community education. So I'll start right in with some examples. And, I'm really focusing in an agricultural, farm, or garden-based education context here. We could zoom out and really look at community education. And there's so many examples of emerging and emergent community education that aren't ag related. They're skills based, they're competencies based. So teaching different languages, teaching different, skills like using Microsoft proficiency, like library workshops, all different kinds of things that aren't ag specific. But today I'm going to be focusing on that. So, in the spirit of this form of education where we ask before we tell, in lecturettes, I still like to pause and invite you to write down examples of community education in an agricultural context. Maybe these are workshops that you've been to, workshops that you've been a part of organizing, could be just something you remember or have seen recently, something we've discussed in class. So I invite you to pause this and just, jot down some examples. And I'm going to keep going and highlight just a few, knowing that there are so many. So I think that, one of the things we spoke about was that there's no one right way for community education and agriculture and farm-based education. We're making it up as we go. And so, they're fine and difficult lines to draw to say this is community education and this isn't. But I'm going to highlight some examples of what I find and what I've engaged in personally and through our program in community education. So I think of tours, and this is also touching on types of community education, are great examples of inviting some members of your community, whether they're small members of your community, like little kids, or they're adults, inviting them into your space or a space and educating and inviting connection there. So a tour does that really well. This site might look familiar to you on the left. This is a old school, deep cut picture of the UMass Permaculture Gardens, a tour happening there. And then on the right, it was a former ag leadership student, Shoshi Salazar, former TA, leading some kids in a workshop doing planting. So it can really look a lot of different ways. I've seen farm-based education, and I'll share a couple more examples. So one of the things I saw, some farms are really shifting and have their models centered on educational programming. So that's like an aspect of their farm that brings in money. That's part of their economic viability model of their farm, is that education is a product, just like kohlrabi, just like vegetables or animals. So if education, this is a farm that's in the area called They Keep Bees, an apiary, and they focus on education, and they're doing this new generative queen school. So how to do queen rearing. And I just grabbed this example. I just caught it in my inbox. I thought it was interesting. Looking at a series of workshops that happen over weekends. And so this is one thing I also want to mention is just a series. You can have workshops that are one-off community education events. Maybe it's a festival with rotating workshops, or you have a series. So all of these things build on each other, and you have to sign up to do the whole package. And the learning outcomes for the series are with an understanding that you go to all of the workshops within the series. And then that's kind of nice because one of the words that sticks out here is cohorts. You get cohorts of people and you're really building community, right? You have more capacity to build community when you see people more than once, when you see people more than 40 minutes, right? So keep that in mind as you design your workshop, that, how can I build community in this short time I have today? If that's my goal, am I dedicating sufficient time to it, knowing there's limitations and how much I can do in just a one-off event? This is something I also wanted to mention is that They Keep Bees is also doing this online school. And so I just think that, while a lot of us shrug off like, oh, online, as in-person students, I think it's really interesting that some of these farms are continuing the momentum and working with, wow, we can reach a lot of people. There's demand. There's people who want to come to our farm and they can't. And we could, earn some money offering these programs online. Some folks have the skills and the capacity to do so. So it's just something why, I also am offering the opportunity for you to do an online workshop is because I do think it's relevant, whether we like it or not. It has traction, it has staying power. And this is a part of community education moving forward. Libraries, community spaces are offering Zoom workshops. The university is offering Zoom workshops for those who find that better, for those who have children at home, for those who have other duties and roles. It can be a way to enhance access in a community to offer things across modalities. So I just wanted to bring this slide in to show this farm is offering a breadth of both in-person on farm and online opportunities. And I'm looking over here because I've got notes over here. So this is a unique organization that it's a nonprofit that does work with hunger and poverty in the US and teaching folks on low and fixed incomes on how to cook with different with produce and in different contexts. And so they have a variety. They have digital content, they have online cooking classes, in-person cooking classes. And so I think it's interesting to look at, the nonprofit model and how they're really trying to partner with and work with community groups and listen to needs in the community. So I can't emphasize enough, and this is something we've spoken about in this class, but haven't articulated explicitly. One of my teachers, Deb Habib, who runs the Seeds of Solidarity Farm that we've used as an example in this course over the last years, brought in the teaching of we move at the speed of trust. And that reminder for me is really helpful. We can only, if I move into a community and just start offering workshops, I'm not really looking back, zooming out and saying, hey, what does this community need? What is the, what are the dynamics of this community? And in order to do that, I have to show up. Maybe it's volunteering, maybe it's going to some of the community meals and talking with community members and hearing that people are really interested in fermentation and saying, oh, that'd be great. Maybe we could offer some fermentation workshops and saying, instead of coming in and saying, you know what you need some fermentation workshops. I think you're going to get more buy-in, more trust, more connection, and more capacity to build community if you listen to what the community needs. This class is, sort of moving not at the speed of trust in that it's a very flash experience just to kind of get you working through that. But if I could have, 13 more weeks with you, we would look at how do we really go into a community and ask questions and show up repeatedly and get a little bit of a sense, knowing that it takes time, depending on the community group you're working with, to really get clarity and get more information and to try things on and see what works, what doesn't work, what is well received, what isn't. A lot of the times in community education, it's like you plan events and people don't come. And that's how you learn what works and what doesn't. And so it's non-linear, it's not always clear, it's sometimes messy. And I just wanted to bring that in. This is an example from the familiar local Simple Gifts farm, just doing a workshop on their farm with a community member doing from another farm, offering a skill that they know that their CSA is interested in. So they have not only a captive audience with their CSA and that they have, I don't know how many members, but say they have 500 email addresses for their CSA. That's a pretty good outreach to share your workshop and offer this, add-on opportunity to, create a platform for a community member to offer their skills. But CSAs have a unique opportunity depending on where they are, because every community supported agriculture is taking place in a unique environment, right? So what might work at Simple Gifts might not work at the student farm, or might not work in a more rural place or an urban place where folks don't have big kitchens or whatever, right? So paying attention to those details is a process. We're not going to learn this overnight. This is just why I'm taking a little bit of time for us to look at both the longer arc of community education and then this sort of acute experience. And some of us have been engaged in community groups over time, whether those are campus groups or groups in the local community, maybe groups back in your hometown. And maybe they're organizations you've been with are a part of, or faith-based organizations that you've been a part of as a kid. And so just bringing this in here to remember that each community is different. Each farm-based education experience is different depending on who you're engaging and where it is. And so, you can work with adults, you can work with kids. There's sort of, and I think of community education as non-formal in the sense that, a lot of these aren't credit bearing opportunities, or like, I'm not gonna, maybe somebody will make me like a cute little certificate that I completed a kimchi workshop, but like, that might not, they're not really credentialed in a formal like credit bearing way. And so maybe they are, some community like libraries or offer courses in learning a new language, and you might get some kind of certification. So a certification is sort of like an interesting bridge between a non-formal, something you can earn in a less than formal context, but it has to be accredited and therefore will cost money, because those credits always cost money. But you can also have these really non-formal, like, let's go foraging. Like the goal here is to connect with nature, be with each other, etc. And so I brought this in here to say that the type of community education really has to do with, what are we trying to get, the intention? What are we trying to get out of it? I asked you to think about this, and that's, what's the goal of my workshop here? Is this to inform people? Is this to demonstrate something? Is this to have an experiential, participatory learning experience? Is it to practice a new skill like pruning? So you decide, maybe it's a hybrid of those things. Like, I'm going to demo how to make pesto, and then we're going to practice on these 3 blenders, whatever that is. Thinking about the different types of communication, what you're in community education, and what your intention, what the intention is for that type. And then, we want to look at our learning objectives, which I'll talk about in a couple moments. But getting started, as a student in a student body, as part of a student community, maybe you're working with a student group because that's most accessible, especially given the shorter timeline of this workshop. But I make it short because I want you to just like try, go for it. Some folks might say, hey, I don't know enough to give a workshop. And we talked about this in class, like that little like imposter syndrome that can happen as an educator, facilitator. And the most important thing when doing this is claiming what you know, and saying, hey, I'm not an expert in this thing, but I really like doing it. And my hope today is to unite us, make a little space for us to come together as a group and explore it together, and to take that sort of pressure off yourself. And so now that I've said that, I want to look at these steps. So we're choosing and narrowing a topic, and you've been in this process. We worked on this, really refining that a little bit and going in. You can only do so much in so long, right? So thinking about what your learning objectives are, who your audience is. So you're going to align and clarify your audience. Who is this for? Is there an age group? Are you going to be doing things with tools? And does that shift the age group that this is for? And looking at, the venue, you're going to strategize and you have to communicate, do a little bit of outreach with a venue. Maybe it's a student business. Maybe it's a community group on campus that you're already a part of, or a club, or maybe it's the sustainability festival. You're going to do a short demo. Thinking a little bit about, is that indoors or outdoors? Do I need a rain plan? What's the physical space going to be like? It can be really hard to plan a workshop in a place you've never been before. So just, it's like almost like all these they're building blocks. So then you look at your learning objectives and say, okay, well, if this is my topic, this is who I'd like to give it to, this is where it's going to be, what's possible at the end of this 30-minute, 60-minute, 90-minute workshop. What do I want my participants to be able to do? What do I want them to know? And does the space, is that conducive to that? Well, maybe not. You'll find out, but we're going to try. So thinking about those things as blocks. And then, and they're not always happening linearly. So maybe you're reaching out right now to communicate to a venue, seeing what's possible, and then planning around that. So, that's the thing in community education. It's not always clear. You're kind of like bopping around and putting things together concurrently. So maybe your learning objectives will shift a little bit if it's going to be indoors, or if it's going to be in this space, or if it's going to be with this many people, right? You want to promote and share your workshop, your friends, your family, your community, or your people, get them there. Have you ever heard the saying, you spend so much time planning the party that you forget to invite the people? And sometimes that's, I'm really guilty of that. I get so into planning these events, and then I'm like, oh gosh, I didn't I didn't send an email about this. So who is this for? And are you reaching out? Start building interest now. I get a lot of folks that tell me, I don't like promoting myself. Yeah, I don't either. And in order to really just like put yourself out there, take a risk, reach out to 5 people you know, share it with your family, share it with an announcement in a class, and try it on. Just try it on. That's my push. Ask for support when you need it. And throughout the whole process, you're going to be refining your objectives, and those will dictate what kind of materials you might need in order to execute those objectives. If you want to execute those objectives, you're going to need 3 stations, then you're going to need 3 blenders, or you're going to need 3 whatever, want to keep it simple, because we talked about there's really not a budget to buy new materials. You can reach out, you can ask each other. I encourage you and invite you to lean into the collective in this class to ask for help, and ask for, hey, like I need this, or who has shovels, who has buckets, right? And then as these things start to come together, like I explained, you got this minute or timed agenda that it's for you. It's your internal use. Like, okay, if I got 60 minutes to do this thing, I'm going to spend the first 10 minutes doing this. I'm going to spend the first 20 minutes or the next 20 minutes giving this little informational content or demo. And then we're going to practice for 20 more minutes, and then we clean up. And then we close, right? We debrief. You have that little timed agenda so that you know how long, and like if you're going really far over, how do you adapt? How do you adjust? I personally, a stylistic choice, I don't share that information with my participants, because then if I do radically shift it, they don't feel like anxious, like, oh, she's going overtime, or, it's like, I just tell them what's coming and I don't attach time to it, but you're welcome to do that. You've got the agenda that you might share for external use, just like you did with the micro teaching. You want to orient your audience to what they're going to expect that day. So the last thing I'm going to talk about is objectives. And this is just a sample that you can find up on Moodle of a previous workshop that one of the students did, Jackie, Powering Our Bodies for Environmental Action. It was a fitness exercise class, but she did and spent some time really connecting folks and getting folks to think about environmental change and impact, and how to sort of have the invitation was to get in the body and also to reflect on environmental change. Kind of radical, cool, fun. She just took these 2 things that she really loved. She was a fitness instructor, and she really wanted to participate in the Earth Day festival and the Earth Day activities. And so it was very, very cool to see her put these things together and see what worked and what didn't, right? She did an exercise where she had folks write a quality or a core value on a rock and hold a rock and talk about that, and then do some exercise, so just like thinking of like, what are these little things that maybe they're just like stringing together these 2 or 3 10-minute activities, doing some intros, doing some debrief, and you got a workshop, right? So this is just an example, and I wanted to zoom in. And as you plan this, you'll see that maybe your objectives will change. And so really it's like, as the venue comes together and as things come more clear, always going back to those objectives. So that's what I've got. I hope that this helps just get you thinking a little bit more, and remind you that it's not so hard. It's okay to be nervous. If you're stuck, please reach out. But community education is happening all around us. So many organizations and farms are adding this to their work. And so I think it's a really useful skill and place for you to start. So I look forward to seeing what you come up with. Talk to you soon.